Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to let everybody log in here, and then we'll get going here in just a second. All right, we'll give it one more minute, and we'll get going. All right. If at any point you guys can't hear me, just go ahead and click in and say that you can't, and I'll try to address some audio issues that we've already had this morning. But welcome. I am Kirsten McPherson, and I'm happy to be here and doing this webinar with you guys. Hope you're having a great one of the last days of August. So we're going to do a 30-minute webinar today, which is a little bit shorter than usual, about newsletters. So real quick, just with everybody kind of, we'll test a couple things out, a few housekeeping rules. But you have a question and answer box, so you can type in different questions directly to me as you have them. And so that's one way to be able to communicate. And the other thing to note is that this webinar will be available for you online. So we'll be posting it to our Golden Shovel site as well as sending it out. And therefore, you'll also have access to these slides. So you will be able to get these. Right out of the gate, let's just introduce myself. My name is Kirsten McPherson. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Golden Shovel Agency. So I am responsible for all of our outbound and inbound marketing. As such, I'm also responsible for the newsletters. Newsletters are kind of a topic that a lot of people have, where it's either you love them or you hate them. And so hopefully through this, I'll be able to give you guys some tips to make it not so burdensome, because that's one of the main drawbacks of newsletters is just the time it takes to build them. So a little bit about Golden Shovel, if you don't already know us. We are groundbreaking economic development communications. We work within workforce attraction, business attraction, BR&E, and then regional strategy. So we do marketing for economic development agencies, and that's strictly what we do. So right off the bat, if everybody would just type into your question and answer, just let me know if you have started a newsletter, so you guys have a newsletter that you're currently doing, or if you are thinking about doing a newsletter, or if you've never really thought about doing a newsletter, but you're kind of wanting to start going that direction. So everybody just take a couple seconds and type in the comment box there on if you guys are currently doing any newsletter actions. We got a couple. So you guys are doing newsletters. One that says they're not. You're thinking about it. Okay, great. Perfect. All right, well, this hopefully will be able to be good for you guys. It's a little bit kind of a mixed bucket. You guys have some that you are working on, and then some of you who are thinking about going that direction later. So just as an introduction, as to what a newsletter actually is, but this is one of the most cost-effective marketing tools for building regular communication with customers and prospects. So to be successful, however, your newsletter must offer readers content that is useful and easy to digest. There has been a lot of research around newsletters and the best kind of content versus newsletter function, and people like to skim them. So just think about how many newsletters you get in your inbox every day and how hard that is for you to be able to field all of those out. I get probably 50 a week of just newsletters in my inbox, and I read only probably about a handful of them. So most newsletters, people skim through and then they get rid of. So therefore, people are really super selective in the items they open, and they really are looking for specific information that's useful for them. So that's something very much to keep in mind as you're thinking about building your newsletter. So why use a newsletter? The primary reason is the fact that you own your contacts. We've done a lot of conversations around social media and how social media and digital marketing is king, and specifically around LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and social media. One of the things to keep in mind about social media is you don't actually own those contacts or those connections that you have. Social media companies like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those are privately owned companies. So they can take and shut down social media at any point that they want. And therefore, all of your contacts and all the people you've been communicating with over the last several months, weeks, years, whatever it is, are now no longer there. And you're having to start rebuilding that whole list. So with email newsletters, you're gaining all of these contacts that are strictly yours. You can put them in your own database. You hold on to them specifically for yourself and for your organization, and you're not worried about anything changing when it comes to the algorithms or anything like that. The only thing you have to worry about with newsletters is that your list might get dated as people change jobs or get rid of emails or whatever that looks like. But it is your contacts that you own. The other reasons to use newsletters is that you can remain relevant. So you're continually up in people's business, basically, and you're sending and letting them know that you're there and that you exist and that you're doing things with them. You're engaging with your audience, so hopefully it's content that they feel that they can engage with, and you're giving them a reason to engage. You're giving relevant information, and then you're also kind of creating the sense of expertise within whatever area you're carving out. So email marketing, what actually is it? We think about email marketing as just being, we're just going to put together this newsletter, we're going to send it out, and we don't really have any goals associated with it. We don't really have any reasonable expectations as far as what that should have, other than that we know that we should do it. So email marketing is the use of email to promote your business or organization. It is used to cultivate relationships. It's used to keep current customers informed. And it's able to be the key component on where you're updating your brand, and there's so much more you can do with it. You can share successes, you can share any type of loyalty programs and various different things like that, shop local programs, things along those lines. However, I will say it's really important to note that economic development marketing differs from other marketing. So how you usually see email marketing happen isn't exactly how you're going to be using email marketing yourself. You won't use a newsletter like what you see that happens in your inbox. You're not selling a product. You're not getting someone to purchase life insurance. You're not opening up a dog wash. You're not doing any of those things. So what you're specifically doing is you're getting direct contacts to engage with your community for optimal development. So again, this is completely different than a lot of newsletters you see because of the content that you're going to be pushing out and the reasons behind why you're doing so. So you're not directly selling a product or a service. You're selling a community. You're selling what your organization offers, and you're getting people to engage with that. So because of this, there's two different audiences. So you have an internal audience and you have an external audience. A newsletter can be used for both of these things, and it's good to kind of keep these lists separate. But when you're thinking about internal, think about people like local leadership, stakeholders, businesses for business retention and expansion, maybe some more regional partnerships, those internal communications that are really prominent to be able to be within your area. This is much, much different than external communications. So how you're talking about these things differ greatly, and so that's really important to note. So creating a newsletter. You have to pick the right platform, and this can be one of the more daunting aspects of a newsletter. Those of you who have a newsletter currently, if you want to just type in or send in the comment box, what platform are you using? Is it HubSpot? Is it Constant Contact? Is it MailChimp? Is it something different completely? Then design is everything. So design is way more important than you think it is. And then content is king. So is the information you're providing relevant to your audience? Is it something that people are going to want to engage with? Again, it's really important to know who your audience is. You don't want to be sending external emails out to people who are just focused on internal information. One of the best examples of this is actually our friend and strategic partner, Dean Barber, brings up quite a bit on his LinkedIn feed as far as all of these different economic development groups are sending him, and he's a site selection certification and Barber Business Advisors. So he lives in Dallas. He's obviously connected to economic development agencies all over the country. But one of the things that he always talks about is, why is there a community 3 states over asking me to go to a crab crack when I live in Dallas and I have no interest in doing that? So you really want to make sure that you're paying attention to who's on your email list and how to communicate with them, because that can also really hinder your newsletter's experience and also kind of create some negative effects, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So picking the right platform. Like I said, this is one of the more difficult portions of email marketing, is finding the platform that works for you. So the best component that I can say is that you only want to use an email marketing platform that you can directly track and see who is clicking on things, who is opening up the emails, and who's engaging on a different level. So for example, HubSpot, and I believe Constant Contact as well, will show you an outline of your entire email as far as who's opened it, who's clicked on the different links, and you can see who's engaging a little bit more. So that's a really great way for lead generation, bearing in mind that the people who are actually actively working and clicking on your emails and your email newsletters are people who are probably already really engaged. This is a really good place to be able to just keep that continual contact, not necessarily be able to cold call or direct anybody else in. So it's somebody who's already had some sort of communication, or they're opting into this email. So designing a newsletter. So one of the things that I see all the time is too many photos will send you to junk mail. Boring will get you dismissed. Too much color and different fonts is hard to read. So you want to be able to create a simple yet appealing template that fits within your brand. Still own who you really are and who your brand is, because that's going to be what people see instantly. So if your logo's not in there, if your community is not in there, if your county is not in there, whatever that looks like, it needs to be. People are going to either accept or dismiss that newsletter based off of who they think you are right from the get-go. So you want to be able to create that simple yet appealing template and use that repetitively. Don't switch up your template every single time that you're moving things around. You want to highlight with 1 to 2 photos, but no more. So think about photos from successes in your community, maybe not necessarily events that don't resonate with your entire audience, but photos that show who your entire community really is. And then the other thing is, make sure that you're using content blocks to be able to separate the information out so things are easy to read and they're clearer to read. You don't want to have things that are really difficult for people to read or understand, just because it's harder to be able to visualize, and people like to be able to skim through things. So keep that in mind while you're designing everything, is that people like to skim. Next, content is king. So you want to pick content that is relevant to the email list, Keep in mind, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but internal versus external is incredibly important. If you're sending out things to your internal population, your local stakeholders, folks like that, focus that content on them. If you're sending things out to external, like site selectors or industry leaders that aren't within your area, focus that content to them. You can do combined content, but also be really leery of what you're putting in there. Again, don't put events that people wouldn't already kind of resonate with, unless you're doing a really big conference in your area or something along those lines. Choose short clips from news items and link them back to your website. This is probably the most important part of everything that I tell you. I see newsletters all the time that have all of this great content, but there's no way to be able to get more or to be able to see where more is. And so you want to always link that back to your website, because that's another really great lead generation component, is noticing who is actually engaging with your newsletter and then directing back to the website. And hopefully you're going to have a tool on your website that can show you who all of those people are. Make sure you're creating a call to action. This is another thing that I see on newsletters all the time. They give all of this great information, but then what am I supposed to do with it? Am I supposed to call them if I want more information? Am I supposed to engage with them in a different way, or are they just giving me all this information because they're really nice? So make sure that you're creating some sort of call to action, whether that be to contact you, to contact your organization. Maybe it's to be able to download a guide of some kind, or to be able to connect further. Make sure that you have some sort of way for them to be able to follow up if they really find value in your newsletter. The other thing is, don't overshare. Don't put 1,500 different content blocks within your newsletter. That's way too much information. Stick to about 4 to 5 different content blocks. And again, really short snippets that link back to the website. So you don't want any content block that's going to be over 3 to 5 sentences in length. Try to keep it more at that 3 sentences component. So what content do you include? You can include updates about your organization. Maybe you have a team spotlight, so you're highlighting somebody on your team every single month. Maybe you're giving information that you just switched to a public-private partnership. Maybe you're just giving general information about your organization as far as what the different services are that you provide. Provide community information as it relates to the audience. Again, internal versus external, but what site selectors and industry leaders want to know is different than what internal folks want to know. So if you want to provide any types of data or information, maybe you have a really good workforce study that came out, put that information in there as it relates to the audience that you're trying to gain more interest with. And then give valuable information such as white papers. If you have the interest in doing white papers and providing them more information as far as what you do as an organization. Another thing you can do is provide tear sheets. So if you have a new property that's available, or if you have a new industrial complex, provide that information in the newsletter. Don't make people go and hunt for things. If you're sending them a direct newsletter every single month, give them a way to be able to engage and see what you actually have going on. And then also share successes and wins. If you have a new company that comes in, if you have a business that's expanding, if you have a really great training program that just kicked off, don't be afraid to share those things, and make sure that those things are also included, because those are really good for both audiences, internal and external. So how do you engage beyond the newsletter? Your newsletter, like I've already said, should direct people back to your website. This is probably the most key component. If you don't take anything else away, make sure you take this away. If people aren't being directed back to your website at least 3 times in your newsletter isn't being effective. So you can track who opens the newsletter. How many times are they opening the newsletter? Are you engaging with them beyond that? Do you know who these people are? If you don't know them, maybe it's a good idea to reach out and be able to figure out what other information that they're looking for. And then share the same information across social media platforms. There's no reason that you have to duplicate, that you have to figure out new content to push out on every single thing that you're doing for your marketing efforts. use the same content that you have created for that entire month and use it across all channels that you're working in. The other question that we get all the time is, well, we have this newsletter, but how do we get people to subscribe to it? We have our email list that has only had 500 contacts on it for the last 2 years, and we're not getting anybody else to engage. So there's a couple different ways to do this. It is probably one of the trickier parts of newsletter marketing, and it takes a lot of time and energy to be able to cultivate this. So make sure you have a subscription option on your website. So when people are visiting your website, they can click and decide that they want to opt into your newsletter. Do a social media push for subscribers. Let them know what type of information you're putting out and why that should be relevant to them. Also maintain which audience that you're actually trying to attract. If you're trying to get more internal stakeholders, so if you're trying to get community folks to be able to participate, know which platform most of your community is on. Most communities, that's probably Facebook. If you're trying to engage more externally with site selectors and industry professionals, that's going to be more on the LinkedIn approach. So know where your audience is to be able to actually get them to subscribe and want to engage with you more. You can host webinars. This has been one of the more successful things that I've seen done, because then people are seeing what information that you're giving, and then they're wanting to engage because of that. So you can host webinars and input that into your system. You can collect names of events. So if you go to like IEDC or any of those and the business cards that you have, automatically put those into your email marketing list. One of the things that I will kind of caution now is there are a lot of rules around email marketing and how you can actually obtain these lists and how you can actually obtain these contacts. If people are opting in via your website or social media, they're automatically giving you permission. It's a little bit more fuzzy when it comes to newsletters, when it comes to business cards. There's no direct ruling on not being able to put that in because they're offering you their contact information, but you also have to be a little bit more leery of that. The other thing that you can do is you can do email purchasing. So email purchasing is one of those things. If you have, you want to target XYZ people in this industry, that's a really good way to do it. And then the third party that you're purchasing the email list is actually the one responsible for adhering to all of the rules and regulations around email list gathering. So you also have to be able to pay attention to all that stuff. So email marketing is a little bit more fuzzy when it comes to the rules and regulations around it. I do caution you to make sure that you're kind of aware of what those rules look like, just because sometimes the fines associated can be quite heavy. However, I will say this is only if you have 10,000 or plus contacts. If you don't, then they're probably not going to be watching for you. So, a few newsletter warnings. You're going to get reported as spam. That's just going to be the name of the game. You can't worry about that. The best thing you can say is just kind of do a silent thank you to those folks that just unengaged with your newsletter, because they obviously aren't going to be with your target audience. So no's are way better than maybes, right? So don't worry about getting reported as spam. However, if you're reported too much as spam, then that could be a red flag on your account. So make sure that at least every newsletter that you send out, you should expect about 3 to 5 spam reports, because those are just people who are unsubscribing. Consistency is key. If you decide to send out a newsletter, send one out at various intervals that make sense for you. So either monthly, maybe quarterly. You can do it weekly if you decide to. However, make sure that you're kind of aware of what is actually realistic for you and your organization, because if you start trying to do a weekly newsletter and you drop off the face of the earth about week 4, people are going to wonder what happened. It's going to be harder to get them to re-engage. And then know your audience. Again, know your audience. This is one of the biggest things. So it's often sometimes better to have 2 lists as opposed to just 1 list. So the takeaways from this is the best way to engage with the audience that you own. Again, an email list is contacts that you directly own, and nobody can actually take those away. So make sure that you have them on a backup database. You're not just putting them on your email platform, and you have a running list that's able to kind of continue happening. Again, with social media, it's a great tool but don't put all of your eggs in that basket. It's a good idea to have various lists and 2 types of newsletters. So again, an internal versus external. You can do the combined newsletter, but make sure that you're putting that information correctly within the newsletter. Design and content is actually really important. If it doesn't look appealing, if it hurts my eyes, I'm probably not going to read it. And I guarantee you not many others are either. We live in a world where people are aesthetically pleased, so make sure that your newsletter is designed quickly and efficiently, but also appealing to the eye. This is probably the greatest lead generation tool if you track it properly. So if you're using a platform that doesn't allow for tracking, it's going to be really, really difficult for you to be able to show your return on investment on this. And again, this is already a way where people are already engaged with your organization in one way or another. It's not necessarily they just kind of stumbled upon your website and they're like, oh, I want to be a part of this newsletter. They probably already know something about your organization and they want to know what's happening within it. So keep that in mind as you're sending and crafting these emails, that they know something about you. They might not know much, but they know something about you. And so with that, like I said, we're going to keep it to 30 minutes. I did leave a little bit of room for questions and answers. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them into the email, into the box here, and we will go from there. So does anybody have any questions? Was there anything that was said that was confusing or that you just didn't really weren't expecting? Is there anything in here that was shocking to you all? Oh, this is a good one. Have you done any research on video newsletters? So video newsletters are, so it's an interesting one. Videos are great until they're not. You have to be really careful with how you're doing videos, just because, again, people aren't going to take the time to listen to a 7-minute video. What I would do, and again, videos also are such a large file load that they might directly go into people's junk box. So you have to be aware of that. What I would probably recommend doing is doing a very short blurb on the video and then linking that to an area of your website where people can go and watch it themselves. So if you have a video on the newsletter, depending on the level of firewall protection folks have in their inbox, it might likely go to their junk mail. All right, thank you, Stephanie. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, well, perfect. I kept it at 30 minutes. There we go, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your week and happy Labor Day weekend. I hope you all are out doing something fun. And we will have 2 webinars coming up in September, which is with our partners at Convergent. So those are both up on our website. I encourage you to go and register. It's going to be talking about the importance of fundraising and how to engage and what that looks like from an economic development perspective. So investing in your local area. But with that, thank you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.